The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government in what we were tasked to do.
In the Idaho Constitution, Article 1, Section 1, we have a right to life, we have a right to defend life.
This legislation is centered on meeting the needs of Idaho families.
And we have no way to maintain control over the spending of this program, and it will be a disaster for this state long term.
But we have a whole gamut of kids whose parents would like to do something for them and they cannot.
The courts have long held that our ability to transfer title on real property benefits society as a whole.
This is simply about putting it out of reach of young, innocent, vulnerable children and making our libraries and schools a safe place for them to go.
And I am increasingly frustrated that we cannot stop ourselves from drinking at the public trough.
He's sounding the alarm. He's saying if we don't address these issues, we potentially might have greater problems moving forward.
I feel like we're back to an unappointed board that gets to decide who is essential and who is non-essential.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
We're supposed to be bottom-up government. We're supposed to be representing my citizens' ideas and your citizens' ideas, and we're supposed to be discussing them and debating them to come to a conclusion.
And for me, it's about a couple things. It's about food security, it's about national security, and it's about preserving American exceptionalism.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
Okay, we are live here once again, January 10, 2024. My name is Matt Edwards, and the Idaho Signal is broadcasting. We have, again, another stacked show. I don't want to waste any time. There's a lot going on already down in Boise, and even this morning, there was a hearing, a print hearing for a very controversial yet important bill. And I think hopefully later on today we'll have Representative Crane on to discuss what went down there. But first, one of the biggest issues facing our country is election integrity. And you don't have to look far to find so many opinions and controversies that are happening. And one of the things that Idaho does really well is pay attention to what's going on nationally and making sure that that stuff doesn't come here. And I want to bring on and introduce Representative Joe Alfieri. He's a Republican out of Legislative District 4. This is in speaking with Joe over the past while, I know that this is an area that is very important to him. And so, Joe, welcome to the program. I want to dive into, some of your expectations this legislative session when it comes to election integrity. What's on your plate this session?
Hi, Matt. Thanks. It's good to be here again. Good to talk with you. Well, what's on my plate again? Election integrity is my key issue, my major issue that I'm most passionate about, most concerned about, because if we lose control of our elections, we lose our country. We're no longer a constitutional republic. We're a mobocracy, which some states have already gone to, with all mail-in ballots. They are, their elections are suspect. I'll be frank about it. So I will be revisiting our absentee ballot bill that failed on the House floor last year. I'm going to bring it again this year. I think it's critical that we define who is eligible for absentee ballots, that absentee ballots should not be used as a first option. They should be a secondary option. We should vote in person on Election Day. It's our duty as citizens to do that. We have a responsibility to uphold the republic, as Dr. Franklin reminded us so many years ago, 200 and some years ago. a republic if you can keep it. So it means getting out and voting. Now, there are some people that can't get out and vote. There are fire crew, there are hospital workers, there are police that, they don't have the option to show up on election day. Absentee ballot is certainly an option for them. Early voting is an option for them. There's no reason not to do that for them. There are some people that live in districts that are too far away from a polling station. The state constitution, the statutes rather, in the state allow them to vote absentee. It's just too far away to get to a polling station. That's fair enough. So those are legitimate reasons. There are people that are sick, that are confined to the home, confined to perhaps a nursing home, and can't get out and vote. Absolutely fair. They should have the option of absentee ballot. But the rest of us really need to show up. We need to be there. It's important. It's our republic. It's our state. We have to preserve it. So I'm very firm on this issue. So I will be bringing that again. The other thing we're going to look at is a ballot harvesting bill. Ballot harvesting is where people are collecting ballots from individuals and submitting them. There's some suspicion that there may be some weirds going on with the ballots, some weird things going on with the ballots.
This was a bill. Real quick, the ballot harvesting bill that did pass the House. Either last session or the session before, but then
before, I believe.
And it never got a hearing, I think, in the Senate. So this is something that should have major support again.
I would hope so. Yeah. So we're going to pursue that. Another thing that's been brought to my attention is citizenship only voting, and this is a shock to me. This came up a few months ago. Somebody from outside the state contacted me regarding it. There are states that are now allowing non-citizens to vote. Yeah, you're shaking your head. I did the same thing. I couldn't imagine, because it's clear as day to me that only a citizen should vote. However, there is a language in our state constitution that is similar to other states' constitutions, where it's a little loose. And I don't have it in front of me, unfortunately, but Vermont, for example, has ruled that non-citizens may vote.
Wow!
So we're going.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I've got my Idaho pocket constitution around here somewhere. I'm going to have to revisit that particular statute there. It's incredible what they're trying to do. I mean, I just saw this morning how in New York City they canceled school, told all the students to stay home and do remote learning. Because they needed the building to house non-citizens who've crossed over the border illegally.
Oh my gosh! Oh
yeah. So it's covering all aspects of this. It's incredible. I have to ask you about. I want to get your opinion on drop boxes, because that was another ballot drop boxes, because that was another bill that passed the House that ended up dying in the Senate, not by a vote, but simply by leadership not putting it forward. What's your thoughts on these ballot drop boxes?
The possibility for voter fraud is enormous, and we shouldn't have them. They should be if they do. Now, I know in Kootenai County we have one at the elections office. There is a camera that monitors it. But again, I'm old fashioned. I think on paper, in person on election day. Once a year. Look, Matt, we are able to go out and do shopping. People do that. People go visit their relatives. We're only asking people to come out once a year to vote, or perhaps twice a year to vote, because we'll have the primaries. It's not. I don't think it's an imposition. I don't think it's a burden.
No, it's a privilege. I mean,
it is a privilege. There are so few countries that allow it, and we are blessed by our Lord with this wonderful country that we have. We have to preserve it as best we can. So.
Well, great, Joe. Keep working on this stuff. How can people get involved with you? How can they make sure that they support you? I want to make sure that everybody who's watching this and that will watch this when we clip it out and share it around, it has your back in this.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm open to emails and phone calls. Jalfieri at house.idaho.gov. I think that's right. That may not be right. I don't have my card in front of me, so I can't read it.
We'll get it up there. Yeah.
And phone calls. I'm willing to talk to our people at any time, constituents. I work for you, folks. I don't work for myself. I don't work for the state of Idaho. I work for the people of Idaho.
Amen.
There is a
Thank you.
distinction there. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. All right, Representative Alfieri, thank you for joining us, and get back to the good work.
My pleasure, Matt. Thanks for having me.
All right. See you again soon. All right, folks, you heard it. That was Representative Joe Alfieri, our election integrity warrior down in Boise. We'll be right back. We've got Brian Allman on deck, so stick around.
There's a saying in Idaho, Esto Perpetua. It is forever. But the truth is, nothing lasts forever. Not without a fight. The Gem State is ours to fight for. It is ours to win. For life and liberty. For honesty and integrity. We ride together.
Okay, we are back. Can I get a thumbs up from the control room? How's the mic? How's everybody sounding? Yes, fantastic. We've got, we're still working out the kinks, and everything seems to, knock on wood, be moving right along here. I'm happy to invite back here Brian Allman, Gem State Brian, as he's lovingly known. Welcome back to the program, Brian. I want to dive into some of the work that you've been doing, some of the reporting that you've been doing. I know you are in the Boise area and have your pulse on what's happening there directly. So how are you, sir?
I am well. Thanks for having me on again, Matt.
Great. You've written recently and extensively on the influence of IACI, which is the help me out here, the Idaho Association
of Commerce and Industry.
Commerce and Industry, right? And their powerful influence with a large swath of legislators and lobbyists who are there in the Capitol, and I think it behooves everyone watching who may not know to the extent of the arm of this organization and what their influence means for the good people of Idaho. So can you dive us into this a little bit?
Sure. So I've been at the Capitol the first 2 days. Being here in the Treasure Valley, it's a privilege to be able to get down there. In my home office today, there was quite a bit of snow on the ground, so I decided to wait till the afternoon. But while I was there, especially here in the first couple days, as things are being introduced and the lawmakers have all come back from across the state, there's a lot of people in there with their little green name tags, identifying them as lobbyists. And they're all over, and everyone has an agenda. Everyone has a different interest. And a lot of those interests are in the business community. And if you look at the Sunshine website, sunshine.sos.idaho.gov, you can see campaign contributions to candidates and PACs. And businesses, or in some cases nonprofit organizations like hospitals and other organizations, they move a tremendous amount of money around. They're moving thousands, tens of thousands even of dollars. And the reason is because they want favorable legislation. Maybe they want to keep regulations from affecting them, or they want certain regulations that will help them. Maybe they want actual taxpayer subsidies, as in the case of the launch grant, where graduating seniors can get $8,000 each to go to college or a trade school or a workforce development for in-demand careers. And of course, the in-demand careers are decided by a board that is put together by the governor, made up of business leaders and legislators and other people who are involved. IACI is the Idaho Association of Commerce and Industry, and they represent a lot of these businesses. I don't think their member list is actually public. However, if you go to their website, you can see their board of directors. It's a very large board of directors, and they're made up of representatives from a lot of these big corporations. So there is a lot of influence there. And it's kind of
we just had the Sunshine Report up there. Guys, throw that back up there again. If you have not been to this website, It's very, very informative and very easy to navigate. Now, it doesn't go back, decades or anything, because most of this stuff is only recently been tracked digitally like this. But you can type in a candidate, you can type in a PAC, you can type in donors, and just track to see where this money is going. And it does show individual donors, regular citizens, as well as corporations, and like I said, PACs and all that stuff. But how frequent does this thing get updated, and how well is the tracking in your estimation, Brian?
Well, it's updated. It depends. If a candidate or PAC receives $1,000 or more, they have to report it immediately. Otherwise, it gets reported once a month. So you'll see, there's people are posting their annual reports, their monthly reports, but also there's timed contribution reports, and that's if they get the $1,000. However, there's there's a lot more money out there. If it's going to a 501c3 or a 501c4 that doesn't do electioneering, it doesn't get reported. And I'm not necessarily saying that it all should be reported. It's just this information's here, and I think it's important for people to see the picture of what's going on. And I don't want to necessarily come across as anti-business. I wrote in my piece that's both on Gem State Substack, and also it was republished on the Kootenai Journal recently, about IACI's influence, and not necessarily just IACI, but the business community's influence as a whole. I wrote how Republicans have always been supportive of business. We love free enterprise. We love small businesses. That's what makes our country work. You go back to Calvin Coolidge. He said the business of America is business. And, Ronald Reagan promoted private business as the alternative to government intervention and central planning. And so we like the idea of free enterprise and capitalism. But businesses and the business community has gotten to the point, I think, where they're exerting a lot of influence over our politics, while at the same time, they're not doing for America what they once did. They're outsourcing a lot of jobs and, bringing in people from other countries to do the jobs for cheaper. In some cases, even forcing their American employees to train their foreign replacements. They're firing people for not accepting, an experimental injection. They're promoting all sorts of left-wing social issues. As much as I like going to Albertsons and getting their good deals on meat and cheese once in a while, they're the biggest promoter of pride events here in Idaho. The biggest corporate sponsor. And so we have to ask, are these businesses, do they really have our best interests at heart? I've heard some argue that since they pay a lot in corporate taxes and they employ a lot of people, they put food on the tables of a lot of Idahoans, that they should have an outsized say in our government. But is that really what we want? Do we really want a corporate oligarchy of big companies that are, controlled by these ESG and DEI initiatives?
You covered a lot, and you hit a lot of nails on the head there just now. I mean, that was like a nail gun. It's incredible to me that when and like you said, I'm a free market guy. I'm a capitalist. The greatest things, the greatest technological achievements have come out of the free market innovation. Where companies are low regulated, that are allowed to explore their innovative research and development of things that just make life better for all of us. I mean, it's what built this country. And when you like you're saying here, when we get to the point where it feels like there's an oligarchy going on, where they're cutting out small businesses. I mean, the entire pandemic was a gross display of that abuse, where major corporations were allowed, storefronts and stuff, they were allowed to be open. But if you had a small mom and pop shop and you were deemed non-essential and told to close. Now, that may not have happened across Idaho to the extent that it happened in New York or California. But this you're hitting all this on there. We could go on for days about that, but I want to make sure that people understand the kind of influence that IACI brings to these legislators and what kind of bills we see that get championed by that. So can I hold you over for one more segment, and we can get into kind of some details on what it looks like when IACI gets behind a bill and what that means?
Sure.
Okay, great. All right, folks, we will be right back. Stick around.
All Idaho lawmakers swear an oath to support the Idaho and U.S. constitutions. But how's that working out for you? because not all Idaho lawmakers share the same values. That's where the Citizens Alliance of Idaho pledge comes in. 10 statements inspired by those 2 founding documents that are designed to preserve our shared values. Values such as education freedom, safeguarding free speech, defending our protected right to self-defense, and being responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars. When a lawmaker signs the pledge, they are performing an act of political courage, accepting the challenge to be a champion for our values, and serving with political integrity. To find out if your lawmaker signed the pledge, visit idahopledge.com. Paid for by Citizens Alliance of Idaho. We ride together.
Okay, so I'm glad we showed that right now because this is our show. That's our pledge, and I'm not ashamed to show it because we're trying to make the distinction here when legislators head to Boise. Do they work for the state or do they work for the people? And I'm on the side that legislators go to Boise, that they should be working for the people and they should be there to preserve our values. And that's one of the things, or that is the thing when we look at the pledge that Citizens Alliance puts out, that those are the values that we're looking for. But it seems to me that the folks that score high on the IACI scorecard have either denied talking to me about the pledge, or they've simply refused to sign the pledge, or they make up some sort of excuses about why they don't sign pledges, and that sort of thing. So I want to see the distinction between what is it that IACI is usually pushing that kind of just violates sort of our basic inherent values. Brian, you got any insights there?
Well, what I was thinking as we went to break before is that you go back, and like I said, the Republican position has been to support business. And so you get a lot of, I would say old guard Republican leaders who feel, okay, we should, we shouldn't be involved in business. But, and that's what Governor Little used as his rationale for vetoing the COVID Pause Act. It would have restricted companies from firing people for not, wearing masks or getting the experimental injection. And he vetoed it, saying that it's a Republican position to not, overregulate business, not tell them what they want to do. But the same governor has no problem giving them subsidies, giving them tax credits, giving them carve-outs, basically giving of the government to help the businesses, but telling them that they can't fire employees for getting those shots is too far. And you'll see that if I was trying to bring up the IACI scorecard during the break, they're having some issues with their website. It's once again not loading. But on the Wayback Machine, you can see last year's scores. They really only monitored about 8 or 9 bills out of the more than 500-600 that the legislature considered, and they used those bills to determine their IACI score. And the IACI score is pretty much the inverse of the IFF Freedom Index or the CPAC ratings. So whereas the freedom-oriented organizations will score legislators one way, IACI scores them almost entirely opposite, because their agenda appears to be to use government to benefit their businesses. Whereas organizations like the American Conservative Union or Idaho Freedom Foundation will look for people who are maintaining freedom and not using government to help this or that person or this or that business. So that, I wish I could get through here because to get some specifics, but obviously, the launch grant, I think, is the biggest and most obvious example of how this works. Representative Megan Blanksma, who was the House floor sponsor of this bill, although keep in mind the bill really came from the governor's office. He championed it in his State of the State address last year, and then had his friends in the legislature actually push it through. But she said the quiet part out loud during her committee testimony introducing the bill. She said that they want to give Doug Sayer all the welders he wants. Now, nothing personal against Doug Sayer. I'm sure his company, Premier Technology, does great work and employs some people. That's great. But it just makes it look like cronyism, as Ron Nate pointed out in his own testimony, when a company and a business owner give tens of thousands of dollars to the governor's PAC, and then the governor champions a bill that will then give that company essentially money. The idea is that students get to go get trained, or get trained in a trade that will then help them become productive workers. And okay, that's fine, but why why can't companies pay to train their own workforces? Why are we asking the taxpayer to foot that bill? If
Yeah.
you're one of these businesses, then you see it as a return on investment. You give a couple tens of $1,000s to the governor's PAC or to various candidates, then they vote for a bill that delivers taxpayer money to you to train workers that maybe 50 years ago the company would have paid to train themselves.
Absolutely. I mean, the entire aspect of, again, free enterprise is that you run a company, you have an idea and a project that hopefully you can find qualified people who have invested their own time and their own energy and their own resources to develop a particular craft. And the role of government when it comes to schooling, is this: we want people to have a basic understanding of reading, writing, and arithmetic and come out with some sort of intelligent success in order to, be productive members of society, which we're going to talk about that a little bit later with some homeschoolers. But I want to show the people right now, if we have it, this is that IACI scorecard. If you went to go look at the IACI scorecard now, it's been 404'd, as they say. And this is what you get and there's no reason to do this, right? Because they have, we've got screenshots of this. I mean, the internet is forever. It will always be around. So, Brian, what do you think is it just, I want to give people the benefit of the doubt. Is it that there are folks who run for office who think that these things really do benefit the common person, or are they just living in a bubble and they go to these and they what is it? You're down there.
I think it's a little bit of both. I don't necessarily think you have legislators and lobbyists sitting in back rooms twirling their fingers and thinking about how they're going to screw over average people. I really don't think that's the case. I think in the piece I wrote the other day that I mentioned, I quoted the president of General Motors, who was being considered for a cabinet position in the Eisenhower administration. He said, "What's good for General Motors is good for America," and vice versa. And I think people really think that what's good for Micron is good for Idaho. What's good for Albertsons is good for Idaho, and vice versa. And especially when you get into politics, you end up spending a lot of time with lobbyists, with business leaders, with the rich and powerful donors, which is to be expected. And I think it does become a bit of a bubble. Consider at the federal level. I've been noticing over the last few months, the last few years, that whereas Representative Fulcher, my representative, comes to a lot of events, and whatever you think about him, he's there, he's listening to people. His fellow congressman, Mike Simpson, I've never actually seen him at an event. He came out here for re-election, but he spends a lot of his time with the big donors and the big PACs and the big lobbyists. And you spend enough time with the same group of people, you're going to start to think that that's the world. That's what everybody thinks. So if all you're hearing is from business leaders, this is what we need, this is what's going to help us, this is how we're going to employ more people, this is how we're going to keep people here in Idaho rather than outsourcing, then you start to think, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think we just, I'm not saying that, businesses shouldn't have a say. I'm saying that right now they have a very outsized influence, and, we need to see the whole picture and hear from, regular folks. And we need to see what the actual impact of these policies that they're pushing are. Is the launch grant really going to help us keep business and industry in Idaho? Or is it just going to be a kickback to these companies that, were very generous with their donations?
Right. Well said. Real quick, everybody, the Wayback Machine, we got it here. Here's what they took down. We don't have time to go through all these scores here, but I just want everybody to know the internet is forever. The Wayback Machine is your friend. And if you want to go take a look for that, you should do it. And I know, Brian, you probably have links to all this stuff on your social media and your website and stuff. Please tell us how people can get to you and get your stuff.
Yeah, follow me on Twitter at GemStateBrian. I would be Brian Ullman, but in the pre-Elon days, a lot of people got banned. Also go to gemstatechronicle.com. That's my new platform. I'm tracking a lot of the stuff that's going on in the legislature now. And subscribe at gemstate.substack.com.
Fantastic. All right, thanks, Brian. We'll have you back soon.
Thanks, Matt.
All right. We hope to have Representative Jaron Crane on, but if he can't make it, I'm sure he's got a lot of places to be today. But hopefully we'll have him back after the break. So stick around.
There's a saying in Idaho, Esto perpetua. It is forever. But the truth is, nothing lasts forever. Not without a fight. The Gem State is ours to fight for. It is ours to win. For life and liberty. For honesty and integrity. We ride together.
Okay, Representative Crane is not with us at the moment. Maybe he'll pop in, but I want to just kind of go over what happened this morning, because this morning Representative Crane released a press release debuting his new draft legislation, which passed the House last year. It passed the Senate, and it made its way to the governor's desk, where it was vetoed. It then went back to the House where it originated, and the veto was not overturned. It was upheld. And so here we are again, trying it one more time. So I do believe perhaps, do we have Representative Crane somewhere in the House here? I've lost my notes. Well, anyway, let's kind of go through what this, and I'll get a thumbs up when we can bring him on. Let's go through this press release, because what this bill was to take care of the problem, of the issue of inappropriate graphic sexual materials falling into the hands of minors in our library system, which there's a lot of folks out there that are, they're saying, oh, this isn't happening or whatnot. But then we have a lot of proof that's popping up, especially in the activists within the certain communities across the state. And so we know that this is a problem, and we certainly need to make sure that our children are protected. So a couple of the changes that happened last year with the bill that was vetoed was the was the penalty, and the idea that there would be no recourse not recourse, but there would be no remedy to get rid of the books before you enact a civil penalty or whatnot. And so, according to this press release, the changes that have happened here are that the law there was not going to be any frivolous lawsuits when it comes to this. That this new legislation requires a 30-day request for relocation. So if somebody finds objectionable material within the library, they will have a formal way to request that the library review and move the objectionable books to a different location where they cannot fall within the hands of minors. And so they'll have 30 days to do that. If that doesn't happen, then the civil penalty can kick in after they challenge that right in court. And then the penalty for that would be $250. And that, I believe, would be issued against the library, or perhaps the librarian itself. I know when you are the laws that are on the books when it comes to liquor stores and other places that sell or make available graphic material, that if they do fall into the hands of children, that the individual themselves is held responsible for that. So we want to make sure that we're just putting protections in place, and that just because you work in a library does not give you an exemption when some of this material falls into the hands of children. We could go through some of this material, but I don't need to, because it's all over the internet. You can see other accounts on Twitter and Facebook. There's plenty of groups out there that are highlighting the objectionable material that is being, not only falling in the hands of children, it's being made for children. And these publishing companies, they need to be called out too for allowing and encouraging writers to create this content that is earmarked towards children. But we have a say in it, especially in our state. And you as parents and you as concerned community members can get involved, and we need to make sure that we can do this. So I want to make sure that you guys can see this press release this morning. Representative Jaron Crane, he went in front of the House State Affairs Committee to present the draft legislation. And how this works is when a legislator brings a piece of legislation to the committee, it first has to have a print hearing, which means that the legislation is written, but it doesn't have a number yet. It does not have a House bill. It's not officially a bill. And so nobody really gets to see it other than the authors and the folks that are on the committee that are going to see it and vote for it. And so it's a simple hearing. The representative shows up, he goes in, he discusses what the bill is all about, and the committee agrees that this is worthy enough, the bill is coherent enough that it deserves to be printed, and then come back as a formal bill to then be debated and heard and get public comment on in an actual committee hearing. So you just saw right there this morning that the Idaho Public Television, which broadcasts all of the goings-ons at the Capitol, had this video, had the link up, but they either started it late or they had technical malfunction. But we didn't get to see Representative Jaron Crane present his bill. We most likely saw the motion carry at the end so that it could be printed, and then they went on to some more business before they cut out. So they were really only on the air for maybe 45 seconds or a minute or so. But that's all people got to see today. Take that for what you will. This was again a highly controversial bill last year, and it's coming back this year. So I thank we all thank Representative Crane for forging ahead, going back to the negotiating table and working with other legislators to figure out what it is, and possibly the governor, what it is that was so objectionable that it needed to be vetoed, so that way we can come back around again. I am going to make sure that I'm just getting word from Representative Crane. We're going to have him on tomorrow to discuss this. He like I said, he clearly was in a lot of getting a lot of attention today. So we will have him come on tomorrow. So stick around for that. We'll make sure we book him and get some more insights. Not my ramblings as I try to fill this time. We will be right back. We've got some homeschooler moms, some great people coming on to discuss something that happened just a few days ago here and at the Capitol. So we'll be right back.
All Idaho lawmakers swear an oath to support the Idaho and U.S. constitutions. But how's that working out for you? Because not all Idaho lawmakers share the same values. That's where the Citizens Alliance of Idaho pledge comes in. 10 statements inspired by those two founding documents that are designed to preserve our shared values. Values such as education freedom, safeguarding free speech, defending our protected right to self-defense, and being responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars. When a lawmaker signs the pledge, they are performing an act of political courage, accepting the challenge to be a champion for our values, and serving with political integrity. To find out if your lawmaker signed the pledge, visit idahopledge.com. Paid for by Citizens Alliance of Idaho. We ride together.
Is about homeschooling and some of the impact there. Does a homeschool parent just say, I'm homeschooling my child, no requirements beyond that? And what if they homeschool them for 2 or 3 weeks, take the tax credit and dump them into to the public school system? And then what are the outcomes for kids that have been in the homeschool system as far as being functional adults?
First, excuse me, I want to thank thank Liberty Idaho for capturing that clip and sharing it around. That is extraordinary. That is an extraordinary statement. When I had to watch it a few times because I wanted to make sure that I understood clearly what she was saying and what she was implying. And I am flabbergasted that a sitting representative, that's Stephanie Mickelson, that a sitting representative would disparage Idaho citizens and specifically homeschoolers and homeschooling families by implying that they would commit fraud, because that's what that is when you take a tax credit for one reason and then turn around and then violate that reason by doing the opposite thing and keeping the tax credit. And then B, which is what I really want to talk to some of these homeschoolers that are coming up, is to imply that homeschoolers may not come out as functional adults because they didn't go through the public school system, which I mean, should we have that debate on who's more functional in society or respectful or whatever? Samantha Stigliter is from Post Falls. She is recently elected to the city council of Post Falls. So welcome, councilman. But more importantly, you are a mom. You homeschool, and I know in your professional life you're also a nurse. So there is a lot of bona fides here for you, and I welcome to the program. First, can I get your reaction on what Stephanie Mickelson said there?
Sure. When I looked at it the first time, my reaction was definitely that of like I almost lost my breath, I guess, a little bit. I was chuckling and then just astonished, quite frankly. The first question is just kind of silly. I mean, I guess you could be nervous that homeschoolers are going to commit tax fraud, but seems unreasonable to me. But some people don't eat raw cookie dough because they're afraid of things too. So, you're allowed to live your life however you want. But that second part is kind of mean. I was talking to my husband about it and I was like, is this an audition for that new Mean Girls movie? To ask if someone is a functional adult based on how their parents raised them in a free country it's astonishing and it's kind of mean. So
yeah. And where so and you don't have to get too personal, but where are you in your homeschooling career?
In nursing land, we would call it a novice. I think I have 3 very lovely and sometimes weird boys. My eldest is only 10 and my youngest is 6. So we've been homeschooling for a little over 5 years. But I've had the distinct pleasure of meeting and getting to know and be mentored by a number of families around here who have taken their kids all the way into adulthood and are grandparents and have done this with 5 or 7 or 10 children. So I'm new to the game too, still.
And when in your experience with meeting with other homeschooling families, I'm certain at this point, because homeschooling has just exponentially grown over the years, that you've met parents who were homeschooled as well.
Oh, absolutely.
How functional are they?
Very functional, and some of my favorite people to talk to and get book recommendations from and talk to about what's happening in our local government and religion. And honestly, they're more well-read and more reasonable than many of the general public that I meet in my profession.
Yeah. So can you give us a little bit of insight on what, because we live in a community that has a lot of good public schools, has a lot of good private schools. There's a lot of alternative type forms of education as well as homeschooling. When you see your kids or your family interact with your community who uses all sorts of different types of education, and I'm not necessarily asking you to like compare apples to apples and everything, but what is the general sense? What is the general feeling as to this comparison between the expectation that if you go to public school, that's the gold standard, and anything else is just kind of weird?
I mean, I went to public school and it was fine. And there was definitely like a stigma. I remember when I was younger that like homeschoolers were weird, right? Like, and I don't know, maybe it was just the 90s and that's how it was. But at least in North Idaho, homeschooling is normal. Nobody thinks that of homeschoolers here. and you get freedom. You get to choose what is best for your children. And like I said, I'm new to the homeschooling game. I can't speak for the entire community. I think Miss Mickelson makes a statement about the homeschooling system. And I would just really like to say that's not a thing. There is no homeschooling system. That's the beauty of it. You can homeschool your children for a million reasons. You can homeschool all of your children, each for different reasons, and homeschool them in a different way. And that's really the beauty of it. You can do what's best for your child. And for some people, the public school system is what's best for their family and what's best for their children. And I know personally and love many families and many adults and kids that have committed their careers to being in public school, that have put their children in public school with fantastic outcomes. So it's not to disparage public school either, but like, are they functional adults? It tells me that you have a bias against how I've chosen to raise my family, and that's not something that I'll ever stand for.
Yeah, amen. Very good for you. I mean, that comment it's so loaded with this sort of like
animosity.
Yes. And a defense of a system that is quite frankly is failing. It literally is failing. I mean, I just heard we had someone on yesterday, Aaron Barnard, who was telling us that even in our local district in Coeur d'Alene, which is where I am, there were 600 fewer students enrolled. That's a huge number. And that just means that there's fewer dollars coming to the school, which means that the schools, rather than tightening up and figuring out different things, they're gonna lower standards, or they're gonna push people through, or they're gonna whatever they can to keep that dollar coming in. As a homeschool parent, when you look at the woes that public schools are going through, it must give you a sense of relief that you don't have to deal with that, and that you do have total control somewhat over what your kids are learning and what they're experiencing. How does you're a member of this community, you're also on the city council, so all these things are still affecting you. You're not necessarily living off the grid, so to speak.
No.
How does all this affect you?
I mean, I would love a $5,000 tax credit, but I think if you listen to other comments that have been made about these programs and voucher programs and other comments that Ms. Mickelson has made on other podcasts, like the Idaho Main Street podcast last year, they can't pull the plug on public school. And I get it. I get that they can't do that. But like you're saying, they're not going to tighten up. And I think that there's this idea that when you start taking your kids out of the system, you're in some way, shape, or form disenfranchising the other children that choose to go to public school. And I think that that's just incorrect. What you're actually doing is helping them to become more efficient and do a better job by allowing the market to act. I don't pay for my groceries or like new clothes at Target and then also pay Walmart for clothes that I didn't buy so that Walmart can stay open for people that want to shop there, right? Like, you have to allow the market to work. And then, sorry, I got a little digressed there, but as far as the tax credit goes, I would love it. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of homeschool families just don't want the regulation that comes with those kinds of things. So, and Ms. Mickelson has commented on that about how there's no regulation in homeschool. And I think her quote was, there's a lot of waste and fraud in homeschooling arenas, which is it's just not true. Idaho already has a program available, so you can enroll in a distance learning program through the state, and they'll help you with curriculum. They'll help you pick curriculum, test your kids, make sure that they're on track, and they'll give you money back, $1,800 per kid, which isn't nothing. But you are responsible to the state for what you teach them. And a lot of homeschoolers could do that, but we've decided not to because we don't want the state at our kitchen tables telling me what I can and can't talk to my kids about. Yeah.
All right. Well, Samantha, thank you so much for joining us. What a great perspective. And I really appreciate, I really appreciate having you in my community, so to speak, because you're here. And I hope we can have you back on some other topics as well.
I would love it. It's always a pleasure.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right, folks, we'll be right back. We have more to come.
There's a saying in Idaho, Esto perpetua. It is forever. But the truth is, nothing lasts forever. not without a fight. The gem state is ours to fight for. It is ours to win. For life and liberty. For honesty and integrity. We ride together.
Okay, we're back. I want to properly set up the video that we saw and that we had Samantha comment on. There was a presentation being held at the Capitol for legislators, and there was this vibe of sort of like an anti-school choice, and I'm probably going to get nailed for calling it that, but that's essentially what it was. So all these questions were flying because there's a bill that's supposedly going to be presented soon that's going to offer a $5,000 tax credit to homeschooling and private school families who opt in and want to take it. And it's simply a tax credit. So this has nothing to do with the state being involved in your education. There's no strings attached. There's no money going to private schools or any vouchers or anything like that. It's simply a tax credit that you can take. And so that bill we'll follow closely as it comes out. But it was during this presentation that Representative Mickelson made the following comments. So let's roll that video again.
Schooling and some of the impact there. Does a homeschool parent just say, I'm homeschooling my child, no requirements beyond that? And what if they homeschool them for, 2 or 3 weeks, take the tax credit and dump them into the public school system? And then what are the outcomes for kids that have been in the homeschool system as far as being functional adults?
Again, I thank Think Liberty Idaho for sharing that video and capturing that. We're going to try and get in Stephanie and her daughter Hallie in here. These are two homeschooling folks from a nice, wonderful family. And we may have a little bit of a connection issue, but let's give it a shot and see how it goes. Stephanie and Hallie, how are you?
Good, Matt. How are you?
Oh, good. You guys sound great. So when you saw this clip, what went through your head as a homeschooling family?
Well, when my mom showed it to me, my first reaction was, what are the guarantees that public schoolers are going to have good outcomes? Like, just because you're homeschooled doesn't change. Nothing's guaranteed, but I think homeschoolers in general have much better outcomes.
Yeah, my reaction was slightly different because I was kind of angry, honestly. I'm a little more knee-jerk reaction. But when she had that reaction, my first thought was, well, that's why we homeschool, because we teach our kids how to think rather than what to think. And so critical thinking skills, she didn't even miss a beat. She was like, well, of course outcomes aren't guaranteed. And so I guess that's, it kind of shows that Mickelson, I know she's a new legislator. I think she should do some research and learn a little bit about homeschooling and Idaho families who homeschool. I also, my knee-jerk reaction was, is she really a Republican? Because her statement was pretty loaded, right? Like, what kind of regulations, how are we policing our homeschooling families in Idaho? And I think that's counter to the freedom and liberty values that we have here in Idaho.
Yeah, so true, so true. So, and Stephanie, as a homeschooling mom, is this something that I mean, have you always done this? Have you had experience with public schools? What is your background in this?
Well, I went to public school, and I think it was very different when I went to public school. I'm 53, so I was there a long time ago. We've always homeschooled because of some health things early on. I have twins. This is Hallie, her sister. Twin sister is Sydney. We just decided that homeschooling at the time was best for us because of health concerns. But once we got into it, we realized we would not do it any other way because we have so much freedom to expose the kids to things that public school isn't exposing them to. It's not natural to be locked up in rooms with 30 kids the same age and never engaging with people from different, age groups and demographics. And so because of the activities that we've been able to do, the girls, they interact with babies on up to octogenarians, and they do it really well. So I can't imagine doing it any other way.
Yeah, there's a stigma out there that says homeschoolers are weird, and that's and I think the term weird is being used because they're looking at these kids and going, this is so strange how nice and how pleasant and how forward
Right.
and how engaging this person is, because we're also in our society, we're also used to just, walking with our head straight down, don't talk to strangers, don't engage, stay focused on what you're doing and don't worry about anybody else. But there's a wholeness that I see in homeschooling families that allows for that camaraderie, just like you said, and knowing how to engage from babies on up. It's incredible. Hallie, can I ask you, when you are meeting up with friends who have attended private schools or public schools or any other alternative school and everything, what is your experience? I mean, do you feel like you can hold your own?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, currently here in Idaho, most of my friends are homeschooled, and I get along with them better than I ever did my public school friends in California, which is where we were from before. And I think really the difference is homeschoolers, they just, like you said, they have this wholeness and this ability to connect in a really genuine way. I have really genuine friends here, and there are certainly functional adults that have, great jobs. And I mean, I have a friend who she graduated college with a bachelor's degree when she was 19, and now she's a credentialed teacher at a Christian school. Like, it's really crazy that people would say that homeschoolers don't have good outcomes and aren't functional adults. I think generally homeschoolers function pretty well.
Yeah. Well, I am so thankful that you guys came on. You're proving this representative wrong in all aspects. And I thank you for coming on. I hope to wish you the best in your endeavors. And as this tax credit bill or any other ideas that deal with school come down, I may want to turn to you and get your thoughts as well. So thank you for coming in.
All right. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care. Okay, folks. The reason why I wanted to, highlight this statement from Representative Mickelson is because, should an equally offensive type statement come from a true conservative legislator, the Idaho press would have jumped all over it, called out some sort of asinine remarks about what that person said, and then they would have talked to everybody and shared it around and got everybody dogpiling on a legislator. Now, I'm not necessarily calling for a dogpile on Representative Mickelson, but I wanted to highlight for you that when these comments are made, and they're made in some sort of a random meeting that happened to be televised, and then the good folks over at Think Liberty Idaho saw that and said, "Hey, wait a minute! This comment was not was not right, and seemed highly offensive, and coming from a sitting legislator who's making laws and could impact the lives of homeschoolers, that this sort of animosity shouldn't go unchecked." And so that's what I want to make sure that this program can do, is highlight these things, call people out, and let you know what's going on, and keeping you informed. So again, thank you to Sam, Stephanie, and Hallie for coming on and giving us their thoughts. We really want this forum to be a place where citizens like them can just come on, can be invited on it in the very last minute, which they did. I really appreciate that, and lend their voice to what the big struggle is here, and making sure that the people are kept informed. We are coming up on the end here. So once again, if you like what you're watching, you think this is valuable, and you want to keep us going, please support Idaho Signal by heading over to idahosignal.com. Find out how you can do that. If you are interested in learning more about the pledge, which we talked about earlier in the show, and the values that Citizens Alliance of Idaho is trying to help preserve, head over to citizensallianceofidaho.org, read about the pledge. You can go to idahopledge.com. There's many ways to get to the website and read about it. And then look up your you can type in your address to find out who exactly, if you don't know, who exactly are your representatives and your senator, and you can see if they've signed the pledge, and you can see if they're in good standing. And if they haven't signed the pledge, they're going to be in bad standing, and you should email them and ask them to sign the pledge, or ask them why they won't sign the pledge. So anyway, idahosignal.com. I thank all my guests for coming on today. And tomorrow we're going to get Jaron Crane on to talk about that library bill. So please do come back then. Have a fantastic Wednesday. Take care.
This bill, I think, it puts a stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.